Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast, Season 2, helping pilgrims get ready for their first pilgrimage walk on the Camino, with your host, Camino guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Hearing people's stories is such a wonderful way to get to know the Camino and to begin to imagine ourselves there. When I hear other people's stories, I often find that I can relate to the struggles that they're having. And I can find some hope that I will also find the same connection and camaraderie that they've found on the Camino. When we hear people's stories, we can also learn from each other, from what worked and maybe what didn't work as we prepare for the Camino. This allows us to prevent some of the most common problems, and it also can help us to find the good stuff on the way. I'm delighted to share with you today in this episode the story of Kathie from Dallas, Texas, who walked the Camino in September 2022. You may remember that we heard from Kathie last year as she was preparing for her Camino in Season 1, Episode 5. You may want to take a listen to that before you listen to this episode so you can hear the before we get to the after. In that episode, Kathie shared with us her fears as she got ready to walk the Camino, fears of injury, fears of being alone on the long, lonely stretch of the meseta. She also shared with us her hopes for her walk and her expectations and belief and faith that this would be a walk with St. James, a walk with the Mother Mary, a walk with Jesus, and of course, a walk with God. How did it go? I'm going to let Kathie tell her story. Hi, this is Nancy with the You on the Camino podcast, and I am absolutely delighted to let you know that I have with me Kathie, who I interviewed back in, was it July?
I believe so.
I think it was July. Kathie was preparing for her first Camino on the Camino Francés, and she has completed it. She has arrived in Santiago and returned back home and has agreed to talk with me so we can hear how this went. So all of you who heard Kathie's first interview, the conversation she and I had back in July, can see how this turned out. So Kathie, where do we even begin? Would you refresh us just so that everybody knows where you started and ended and how long you took to do it?
Yes, I'm delighted to be back with you. So yes, I started I think you called it's public transportation gymnastics or something like that.
Sounds about right.
To get from Dallas, Texas to Madrid to Pamplona and then to St. Jean Pied de Port, that was an airplane ride, a taxi ride to a train, and then a taxi all the way up. And it was funny because the taxi driver that took me from Pamplona to St. Jean, he must have turned around 4 different times asking me if I was going to get sick, because that's quite a ride, let me tell you. And then,
yes,
not dawning on me, I'll be walking this.
Which will be easier on the equilibrium, certainly.
Yes. But he actually asked about, should I pull over and let you sit up front? And I was like, I'm fine. And I really wasn't like getting sick, but it really was quite the taxi ride. So I started, so I arrived in St. Jean on August 28th, and I was taking the 28th and 29th just to acclimate myself. And then the 30th of August was the day I started climbing the Pyrenees. And I was hoping to finish by October 7th to Santiago, but I arrived a lot, or 5 days early, actually, which shocked me because I really expected it to take me a lot longer than it did. But
Okay.
yeah, so it was 34 days. I was in Spain a total of 40, but 34 days of walking.
Wow. Okay. So, first thing that comes to mind when you look back over that journey, how was it? What was it?
It was the hardest thing I have ever done, and it is the best thing I have ever done in my life. For a variety of reasons. This really, I think everyone has different reasons for going. I really was going from a spiritual perspective, but also knew that components of it would be very physical, emotional, and that all played into my Camino. The Camino community, there's just nothing like it. I don't know that you can really express how, whether you're walking solo like I was, and many people do walk solo, how we have that respect for each other because of the work that we're putting in. We chose to take this hard hike, and we're doing it. And we're there supporting and cheering each other, whether we're going up a steep incline or really having a heck of a time with a descent. You just felt that, when the pilgrims were around, you really felt that love. You really felt that camaraderie, that everybody is rooting for everybody else. I think one of the things I was expecting was being concerned, I'm almost 64. I was really concerned how slow I was going to go. Well, I had a pretty good pace. I had a faster pace than I realized, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't matter how fast you were going. And I guess for me, that was really a comfort because I didn't feel judged.
Mm.
So it was the best thing. It was the hardest thing. And for me, because my primary focus was prayer, to spend, over 34 days with God is a gift that I really gave myself because I allowed myself to do this. I carved out the time, and I really stayed true to my word as far as really wanting that contemplative prayer time while I was walking.
So we could probably just stop right there. I think you just said it all. That's just 40 days with God or 34 days with God. That's just, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's funny because it was like someone said, put a title to it. And I said, I prayed the way. And that's really how I felt. I felt the power of the Holy Spirit. I felt St. James. I swear he was on my right side. I had my guardian angel working overtime, which I'll talk about later. On my left side, I felt the blessing of the Blessed Mother and Jesus walking every step with me. And, I just get goosebumps really remembering. I love Camino mornings. And I have tried several times to recreate it here. And it's like you have to remember to turn around because as you leave early in the morning, I would try to get out anywhere from an hour to 30 minutes before the sun came up. And for a couple reasons, I didn't want to miss seeing anything. I also, for safety, I didn't really want to be in the dark over an hour.
Okay.
So that was, even though I had a torch on, but the sun rises and you're walking west, so you have to turn around to see the sun. And that was something that, I would either say to my Camino friends that I was making along the way, turn around, you've got to see this. And I took more shots of sunrise. And then there was one day that the moon was just starting to set, and it was a full moon. and the sun is starting to come up, and I felt like this sandwich between the moon and the sun, and the beauty that's around you, and the crisp air, and just the sound, I mean, of the clicking of the trekking poles. It was just, I loved the mornings.
So the senses, every one of
Yes.
them has to get engaged, right? So I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about, I don't know if you know this or not, but on every episode of this podcast, I end with a top tip.
Oh,
Which is things like don't rush the start, get to know your expectations, find your walking pace now while you're getting ready rather than when you get there. The top tip for your episode, I don't know if you remember this, was always look behind you. I mean, what are the chances, right?
probably was in my little head because I was saying it constantly.
Yeah.
And what was really cool was I know that the sunrise wasn't missed on a lot of the pilgrims, because we would be walking and you'd see pilgrims meters and meters ahead of you, but you would see them turning around and it was like, oh, I might be missing something. What's going on over here? Oh my gosh, I had forgot. I intentionally didn't listen to the podcast again. So
yeah. I'm not sure that you heard the final version, because I think I sent it to you before so you could approve it before I put the intro and the outro in it. So how's that for a psychic connection? Yeah. And it's a practical piece of advice because it prevents you from walking away from an item that you own and leaving it on a bench or on a rock. So every time you get up, you look back and make sure you don't leave anything behind. But you also to look back on the trail and see the beauty of nature, the little show that God puts on, and also to acknowledge how far you've come.
Yes.
There's this interesting little twist of, I don't know what it is. Do you remember Alto del Perdón with that big metal installation after
and
Pamplona?
It was where the
wind turbines.
Oh, the wind turbines.
Yeah.
But are you talking about the metal pilgrims?
Yeah.
It has on there in Spanish something about where the wind meets the stars or something.
Yes. So here's the interesting thing is, as soon as you go over the other side of that hill and start your descent, you can't see Pamplona anymore. It's gone. So all that walking that you've just done,
you're right.
It's gone. You are way down the trail by then. And that phenomenon happens every day. You can't see where you just came from. It's that far away. But at the speed of walking, you haven't gone very far, right? But it's such an interesting thing. It messes with my head a little bit.
Yes. I know that there were times I had to turn around, especially if it was a major descent, especially. Mm-hmm. And I had to look back and it was like, okay, I did it.
You did it.
Because there were several descents that I've gone back and forth. Did I want to know about that or did I not? And I did a lot of reading and I was aware of several, but the one from the cross, the Iron Cross.
Yeah, into Molina Seca. Foncebadon.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you go to the cross.
And then you go down and then you have another descent.
That's the worst of the whole way, in my opinion.
I don't know why that's not talked about more, truthfully. But I'm really glad I didn't know. I knew it was hard. I had heard it was hard. I was crazy and did the whole thing in one day. Don't do that, people.
Yeah. So let's make sure this is clear for people. So when you're coming out of León, you go up to the village of Rabanal del Camino, and then you go through Foncebadon.
Yes.
And then 2 kilometers further is the Cross of Iron, Cruz de Ferro.
Yeah.
Where you set down, figuratively, metaphorically, and literally set down any burdens that you wish to set down. Then you walk a little further, and then the trail nosedives down into El Acebo. And then it goes a little further to Riego de Ambros. And then it nosedives again down into Molina Seca, but that stretch from Riego to Molina Seca, the trail condition is horrendous, right?
And I will tell you that I cried 3 times on the Camino. I'm just going to tell you. The first was the second day going down from Orison to Rochefort. And a lot of that was like relief, but it also was, can I really do this? I mean, just really questioning myself.
Yeah.
The second time was coming down to Molina. How did you pronounce it?
Molina Seca. It's
Molina.
A dry mill. Molina Seca.
Molina Seca. Okay. And thinking to myself, I mean, I actually screamed as loud as I possibly could. I screamed and I just bawled and I cried, and it was like, okay, pity party over. Now, how am I going to get down?
So I think the sound may have cut out again. I think what you were screaming was, I can't do this anymore.
I can't do this anymore.
Okay.
And I really cried. I really cried. And there was no one around. And then it was like, okay, which boulder or which, how am I going to place my foot? And, it's to me, it's treacherous. But I did it. And so there's a part of me that's like, I'm kind of glad I wasn't scared away. And I hope I'm not scaring anyone not to do it. The second thing is, I don't know that I would have done the entire, because each descent took me at least 2.5 hours, maybe even 3, because I was, as we'll get into, I had already fallen once. I didn't want to fall again.
Yeah.
So I was extremely cautious. I don't know that other people, it takes them that long. I don't even know how many kilometers that was, but.
Yeah. I heard stories. I actually spent some time down the trail from Ponferrada, and I heard some stories, some people who were actually quite perturbed that nobody had told them about this stretch.
I really, because, let me see how many books I have on the Camino that I read. And, they talk about the descents, but that one in particular really raised the hair on the back of my neck. At the same time, I was exhausted mentally because you are just concentrating so hard, paying attention to where your foot is, how your balance is, your pack, your trekking poles. But I wish I hadn't done them in the same day, because at the end of the day, you're tired.
And things hurt.
Yeah.
I will tell you, maybe the reason it's not in the guidebooks is it hasn't always been that bad. Now,
really?
I have always had a difficult time on that whole descent, that whole stretch. And it's been a while since I've done it, but it wasn't like that the last time I went through. So I couldn't put a date on the calendar when it changed. So it could just be that the guidebook writers haven't walked that part since it's gotten worse.
Well, I have planned to write both of these authors because they update them annually, or at least one of them gets updated annually. And there were 2 things I really wanted. One was really talking about several of the descents, because there's another descent that it just is, it's not as treacherous. It's just very steep, and you really need to watch how it's best to try to go sideways versus having your knees going over your feet when you're trying to stop from going down. Then that's towards the end. But the other is, I really want pronunciations for each of these towns, because everyone I talked to, no one knew how to pronounce a lot of the towns. I'm so impressed that you can.
Well, I've been practicing for a while, but I love that you said that, because I'm going to do an episode next season on pronunciation of the towns on the Camino Francés. And I'm going to start at the beginning, and we're going to go all the way through. And I'm going to give some people some phonetic tips. Like, for example, there's this one town, you probably remember it. It's after Logroño. And I have yet to meet an American who can get this one right. Do you know which one I'm referring to?
Let me think.
Starts with an N. Most people call it Najera.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
It's pronounced Nájera. So think about it. You know what a jalapeno is, right?
Right, with a J.
With a J. Nájera is with a J.
That's where the most beautiful sunrise.
I love it.
That's how I remember that.
Well, and you know what? That's what this experience gives us is it gives us an impression of these sights and sounds and smells and feelings that you'll never ever lose because you did it. My theory is you did it at the pace of walking.
Yeah.
So it got on you. The best I can say.
So say the name again.
Nájera.
Naheda.
Nájera.
Naheda. Okay.
Nájera. Because there is actually an accent on the A. And you can see when you read it, you see it's got the accent, not the accident, the accent. So Nájera. You know jalapeno.
Right. And
right?
recognizing, that it's the J. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit more about what you said, how was the best experience of your life and the hardest. So you've talked about the best, some of both actually. And a lot of it was related to your faith journey and walking with Santiago on one side and your guardian angel on the other. And you knew that going in. You knew that you would be walking with St. James. And I remember you just being so excited about that. So I can see where that would certainly define this as one of the best experiences of your life. What else made this the best?
Well, one thing I do want to say that was played with my little brain here is growing up, St. James to me was always the young fisherman and had the net and casting the net and being fishers of men. And that I really always identified with the young James. So in Spain, he is this, magnificent disciple of Christ. And just even the way they have him dressed, it was like, no, I really want to see him more with his fishing line, his nets. And, so that was really kind of funny for me because I had the James that was on my right side was a young fisherman, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So meeting people, and I felt really, really blessed in ways where names come easy for me and remembering names. Mm-hmm. So it was really funny. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but as the Camino was continuing and going on, I recognized, other people are relying on me to know their name, because I had a Camino family that I met about a week or 2 weeks into my Camino, where Mimi from Massachusetts and Jo, another woman from Oklahoma, we just really hit it off. We were all at different paces, but we met up always for dinner. And then it reached a point where we would just try to get either stay together in a 3-room hostel, or 3-bed hostel, or just even in a dormitory, just making sure that we all were together. So we really were looking out for each other. Jo she is older than I am, and Mimi is younger than I am. And it was really, I will tell you when it really came to light this was kind of before we were even a Camino family, so to speak. I had, I'm going to talk about my accident, if that's okay.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so it was towards the end of the day. I probably had about probably 5 kilometers to go to the next town we were going to. And I was walking with a couple gentlemen. One, D. Alfonso, was from Virginia, Simon from Ireland, and another gal from Ireland, and a couple other English speakers. I don't remember knowing who they are, but we were all kind of together. We were coming out of the woods and coming into an area where there was a bar. And the bar is a great place to reconnect with pilgrims you haven't seen in a while, not to mention getting something to eat and drink and using the restroom. So I'm on this smooth concrete and I have my trekking poles and I am moving them from one hand to the next. So they really were almost in a clasped position together. And I felt a big rock under my foot that shouldn't have been there. And the next thing I knew, I fell to my right and I hit my head. I hit my entire right side and I started really, really bleeding. And as I was going down, I remember, and they even told me, I said this, please don't lose consciousness.
You're conscious enough.
I'm conscious enough to know that I don't lose it. Yeah. So they turn around because I'm actually behind them and they hear me yell and they turn around and they see the blood and everything. So one of the gentlemen is yelling, get toilet paper out of my backpack. Another guy says, I'm running. I'm going to go get ice and we need a taxi to take her somewhere. Because I knew at that point when I'm hearing this, oh, this is really a doozy. It really must be a doozy. So they give me the toilet paper and I'm putting it up on my head and I'm seeing the blood just dripping and dripping and dripping and it's face. And I'm like, So they said, can you get up? And I said, oh yeah, so they helped me up. My backpack, I think, helped a little bit in cushioning some of it, but it also was probably one of the reasons I lost my balance because of the weight. Anyhow, we're walking towards this bar. And of course, pilgrims that I know and, grew to love they're all seeing me coming in with this bloody face. And I'm embarrassed and I have this vanity thing and God is going to break me of this vanity.
Had this vanity thing?
Yes, I still do, but man, was I humbled. So when Aldefonso was saying, Kathie, you've got a Mike Tyson going on. So my eye was closing shut, black and blue, bloody, everything. So this gentleman walks over and Simon comes back with ice. He says he called a taxi. And this gentleman from the UK, such a nice guy, drinking a full beer, almost finished with it. I have a car. Where can I take you? And Aldefonso goes, you know what, Kathie? I speak fluent Spanish and I know you don't. Let me come with you and just make sure, And then he looked up the urgent care or hospital, whatever, and off we went. I mean, it was that quick. And I got to the urgent care. They cleaned out my boo-boo and I had 5 stitches.
Wow.
Oh, I mean, that was
a badge of honor.
Exactly. What was great was, so now my right eye was now closing shut. It was so swollen and so black and blue. But I was a little worried about my hip because I have a hip issue and I fell on that side. But not to do a commercial or anything, but I had my OtterBox on my iPhone in my hip pocket. And when I fell on it. And not only did it not break my cell phone, it didn't break my hip. But I did have an amazing black and blue mark the shape of my iPhone on my hip. So when I got to the hospital, they did this, they cleaned out, they did the stitches. They were making sure I wasn't needed to follow any concussion protocol. Mm-hmm. And then they were making sure that my hip was okay. I really felt like, and I still do feel like I sprained my wrist and my arm because they were super, super sore and it was hard to manipulate. So I started to become concerned about using my trekking poles, because I really use my trekking poles climbing and descending. But God is so good. Not only did he put all these angels in my path to immediately be taken care of, I was headed into the meseta.
Oh, perfect.
I need my poles. And it was like I was able to rest my arm and really kind of my whole body, because it was quite a fall. So then I would put on sunglasses and I could conceal my swollen eye, but then blood drains on your face, and especially an old face like mine. So I reached a point where this eggplant color of black and blue, purple, was no longer concealable.
Mm.
So all day, every day, I got the look of horror when someone would see my face. And it was like, what happened? And I would have to reassure them I'm fine. I did fall, but it was all day, every day. And those that got to know me leading up to that, what I appreciated was they would always comment, gosh, it's looking better. They were lying, but they were letting me feel. But this was the way I think God really used my Camino. I wish this hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I didn't have this bruise. I still have a little remnant of it. But what it did was it did allow me to have people inquire about, oh, what happened? And then we'd be washing our clothes in a tub and hanging them out to dry. And they would start to share a pain or a bruise that they have internally. You couldn't see it, but relating to me, first out of curiosity, then there was some concern. And then just even opening up about what they're trying to figure out. And I just really felt, not that I had words of wisdom for them. I know that while we were talking, I was praying for them. And a lot of times it was just giving them an opportunity to talk and just listen. And
listen.
Yeah.
And bear witness.
Mm-hmm. To the pain.
Yeah.
A lot of hurting people out there. And they have felt, many of them talked about how cathartic it has been walking this Camino, trying to sort out what's of me and what's of the world, and how do I, and that's something that I heard from a couple of people, how do I make it jive? How do I make sense of this? And I also saw, like I said, a lot of really hurting people and people wanting to change things they have no control over. That was real. That was hard. That was where I really leaned into Jesus. They need you, and praying for them.
Wow. It's so interesting when we're able to show a little bit of vulnerability. It opens up a door for other people to feel safe to share theirs.
Maybe that is exactly what was going on, because as much as I did not want my fall to define my Camino, even though I ended up needing it, talking about it every single day. But the way it defined it was an opportunity for physical hurt to help other people open up and just even talk about, their internal hurt.
Wow.
I saw that as a real blessing. So one of the things that you asked me was, what was I hoping for? And I wanted to be a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
More people were blessings to me.
Are you sure about that? I'm not so sure.
Well, and that's the other thing that I think is kind of funny, because if you remember, I told you that the other is I love to be the one to help. Mm-hmm. And I have a real tough time accepting help. But man, I have to.
You had to.
And, when you pray for something, God gives you that opportunity. And I remember saying to you, there's a part of me that I don't really want to pray for this, but
yes,
because I know it means something, I'm going to need something. Mm-hmm. But God in his glory was so wonderful, because I had stitches. They're in my eyebrow. I didn't lose an eye. I didn't crack my face. I didn't break an arm or a leg and have to go home. I didn't break my hip. And there were angels around me. That was not a coincidence. I just think that was so maybe that was his plan for me.
Mm.
Or maybe not maybe. It was his plan.
In hindsight, we can just say clearly that was on cue. I mean, that there you go.
think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when we talked the first time, you said that your greatest fears were being alone on the meseta, which is where this happened, and getting injured.
Yes. And having to go home. Now,
Mhm.
the meseta I loved.
Oh, tell me about that.
And I never felt alone. I never felt alone. And I saw the beauty in it. A lot of people were saying, oh, I like to skip the meseta because it's so boring. I don't know. I kind of like not having a lot of hills and valleys, but I also just the vastness of the world, just to me, in and of itself, was quite amazing.
Mm.
And yes, I did get hurt, but God provided. So all my fears, while they may have, some of them came true. It turns out I really did love the meseta.
Mm.
It wasn't my favorite part, but I did enjoy it.
So what was your favorite part?
My favorite part. So one morning, it was a beautiful morning. I have my ear pods in and I'm praying. I'm listening to some chanting music and I'm praying. And to the left of me, I see this smoke. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this beautiful landscape, beautiful, beautiful countryside. What is burning? Well, it wasn't smoke. It was dust. The next thing I know, there are 150 sheep crossing with border collies and a shepherd, just crossing and crossing. And some of the sheep were fighting, I will tell you. But to me, a city girl, so to speak, seeing all the livestock, seeing the sheep, hearing the cowbells. The mornings were my favorite, but the beautiful countryside. I mean, just even looking at a broken down fence in the backdrop of this green and animals behind it was it's the beauty that God has created all around you. And it's for me to notice. And it just reflects back on the beauty that God has and love he has for us to have provided all this handiwork, all this amazing stuff. So I love the countryside. I loved walking through the woods, even if it was a steep climb. It was still, there was just I didn't like the animal droppings. I will say that fragrance I could have lived without. Yeah, I would say that in terms of the walk itself, those were my favorite parts, the mornings, the countryside, but the people were so much the Camino and the respect. And I have to tell you one story. So, there are people of all ages. I am hardly the oldest and
right.
many decades older than I am doing it. And they're doing it their way. They may not be able to do all the descents and all, but they're doing it their way. And I just have so much admiration for that. But I'm trudging up a hill and I wish I could remember exactly where I was. But this young man I met at a bar maybe a week ago, his name is David and from Mexico. And he and I connected because he's been to the Dallas-Fort Worth area for business. And he comes up alongside and he goes, "Is that you, Kathie?" And I turn around and we're walking and I'm kind of huffing and puffing and he's not. And I've got my trekking poles and he doesn't. But he says to me, he's so cute. He just turns to me and he goes, "You inspire me every time I see you." And I said, "Oh, you're very kind." Because it's like, I don't see this as being inspiration. And he goes, No. He said, "I wanted to do this when I was 15, but I didn't have the courage." He goes, 20 years later, I'm 35 years old. And I'm thinking, I'm in great shape. I work out. This is going to be a piece of cake. He goes, It's not a cakewalk. And he goes, "Then you're doing it." So you are inspiring me because when it's hard for me, I'm thinking, Kathie, is doing it. He didn't say at her age, which is probably what he was thinking. But the thing is, we would leapfrog over each other, as we would go through the stages. Sometimes it'd be a week or so before I saw him again. But when I saw him, he always had a hug. I wanted to adopt him because he is the.
I love it.
But I said to God, I said, if I could have my wish, really want to be able to see these people come through when I'm there. And David was one of them. And he was probably the one I was wanting to see most because he was so psyched about completing.
It's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. The connections that you make, the people you meet, the stories that you hear, and you're at the pace of walking where you're experiencing all these things. I'll call it firsthand, but it's first sense, right? First senses, right? In every way. And then this beautiful scenery. I remember when we talked before, you said that you knew you needed to do your own Camino. Now that you've walked, what does that mean to you?
Oh, my own Camino. What it means, if I were to give someone advice, it would be kind of what you said earlier. Walk at your own pace, prepare. I was stunned, honestly, the number of people that thought they were going to be walking by a river in a babbling brook and did not realize the depth and breadth of how hard the Camino can be.
Okay.
You can choose to take a taxi or you can choose to walk it. And maybe like my Camino family, Jo couldn't do all the climbs and all the descents because her feet were killing her. I mean, she was having a real issue. So she took a taxi and it was like, you're still walking, and be happy with that. So to me, don't sit in judgment of other people either walking faster or slower or made up or not made up. And because that was kind of some of the buzz on the Camino of, you could tell people that were staying at a hotel because they came and they had all makeup and all that stuff. It was like, so what?
So what?
But honestly, I didn't feel like there was a lot of judging. I didn't pay attention to it, but I think it is important for me to do my own Camino. I needed to make prayer a priority, and I had to do that before I left and once I got there, because I decided that I wanted to walk my own pace. I wanted to pray intentionally. So what I did was I put every day that I was going to be walking the Camino on the calendar. And it's interesting because I left probably the last 4 days blank. And that was really more if I thought of someone that I hadn't thought of before I could pray for. But that's when I stopped my Camino. And that blew my mind. So, really. So every day I was either praying for someone or maybe even praying for a group of people. And I would often let them know that I was praying for them, not every time. But what I did was I tried to let people know before, if they asked me to pray for them, this is the day I have you on my calendar that I'm going to be praying.
How lovely.
And then you can virtually pray, and I'm offering whatever is on your heart. That's what I'm offering. I'm offering any of the pain and suffering. And let me tell you, going up some of those hills, don't you know, I would pray Hail Marys. I'm Catholic. I would pray Hail Marys, and you get up and you would think you're almost to the top. No, the Camino reveals so much more to go. So I Hail Mary the heck out of that hill,
I love that. So if we were to sum up your Camino, you prayed the way and you Hail Married the heck out of it.
I Hail Married the heck out of it. And I feel like I conquered some fears doing it by myself. I was never alone, but the fact that I made a giant leap to do the traveling, and the unknown was there. And then I just really placed all my trust in God. I felt like I did prepare physically, emotionally. I wish if I could do it over again, or when I do another Camino, I will ride a stationary bike, because in Texas, while I did climb hills and preserves and that were little stairs or things that were challenging, to build up your quads to the degree I felt it might have been easier for me to climb the hill. I wish I had worked a stationary bike for that. But other than that, I felt like I knew what I was in for. I'm glad that I reached out to people who had done the Camino, because I felt very, very mentally prepared. And then spiritually, because that was such a focus to begin with, I came prepared and I stayed focused.
You'd been doing that preparation for a while, if I remember correctly. Your spiritual preparation. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been praying since 2018 for my Camino.
Wow.
I could show you my prayer journals.
I love it. I love it. So you said something to me after you finished, when we were corresponding, that you had the feeling that your Camino has actually just begun now that you have completed the walk to Santiago. Will you share with me what that means?
Yes. So this was so interesting to me. And I'm still processing and understand, I'm still processing. I think my hope was that I was going to be maybe a spiritual inspiration for other people. And that really, there are a couple incidences that happen that are beautiful and I swear are miracles. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I did not see that walking the Camino. What shocked me was with my blog or with my Facebook postings, the hundreds of people that were inspired, and that the people that would comment about how open I am about my faith. To me, that when I came home, I really was feeling like there's more here. I don't know what that's going to look like. And the one thing that came to me in prayer recently was maybe, I'm an executive coach and a life coach, but now I'm really thinking I may want to get a certification in spiritual direction. And that's something I'm really praying about, if that's really what God's showing me. But I didn't have a chance to read a lot of the comments on the Camino. So when I went back through, number one, I was stunned that some of these people I haven't seen in decades and decades. And they were so kind in saying, you have inspired me. I've been following your journey. I have been praying for you. The number of people that prayed for me. I mean, I'm thinking it's all my prayers. It wasn't. Those angels were as a result of people praying for me. Mm-hmm. And can't believe you would do this on your own. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was my son said, Mom, none of us would have blamed you after your fall of you coming home, or at any point, which brings me to just the way my family supported me on the Camino. If I can share.
Please.
So my husband snuck this big manila folder into my backpack, and it says to Mom, and I could tell it was my teacher daughter created it, but she's opened one note each day of your Camino. We love you and miss you and hope you have an amazing trip. And then everyone signed it. Well, inside there were letters from two of my brothers. I ended up getting emails and text messages from the other two. I got a letter from my sister. All my children wrote me multiple letters. Even my son-in-law, my son's girlfriend, and my husband, wrote me some amazing letters. And if you don't mind, I'd love to share one from each of my kids.
Yeah, let's hear it. I'd love to hear it.
My oldest daughter and I think oftentimes we're kind of cut from the same cloth. She did scripture. So this one, she had, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. And then she says, believe it, Mom. And then a heart and Sarah. So I got a lot of these throughout the Camino.
For those who can't see what you're holding up, Kathie's got a big, large size manila envelope that she read what was on there. And then inside were all these little notes and papers and things. And so she's holding up one that's probably the size of an index card. Beautiful colored pen, beautiful handwriting with the scripture verse on it. So it sounds like there were a variety of things in that envelope.
Yes, yes. So my youngest daughter, very, very colorful. You wouldn't be shocked to know she has blue hair. I love my Jenna. And Jenna is one of the funniest people I know. In fact, when I fell, she was messaging me and she goes, "How did you fall?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, Mom, you've got to come up with a better story. You are my hero. You saved a baby from falling into stampeding llamas." But anyhow, so her note to me was, "You're such a remarkable woman, Mom. This is a trip most people only dream of taking. And look at you, tired, sweaty, sitting in dirt, reading this and still smiling. Who does this? Kathie Kathie does. Go get her, Mom. I love you, Jenna." That's sweet. And then my son, he actually typed a 2-page letter, like 1.5 pages. And I'm just going to read a portion of it, and then I'll explain why these were important to me. "I want you to take a moment and reflect on all the things that could have derailed this trip from happening for you. You and your friend were getting set to go, and COVID happened. When Europe opened back up, Miss Diane had a hiking accident and couldn't go anymore. You decided to go alone, and people were worried. You could have stopped then. When your hip started hurting you while you were preparing, you could have stopped. I'm proud of you for following through on this trip and taking such a large leap of faith that landed you exactly where you are reading this letter. While I do not know if you're at the beginning, middle, or end when you're reading this, I do know that this pilgrimage is not easy. And having this much time away from your creature comforts is so hard. So I want you to know that I am having the creature comforts for you. I'm drinking wine, eating chocolate, and sleeping in the most comfy bed since you left. It's a hard sacrifice for me to make, but it's for you. But in all seriousness, I want you to know that I am so proud of you." And it goes on. But the thing that my daughters and son said to me when I returned was, "This is the first time we got to support you in something. And that you've been this big cheerleader for us. You're letting us cheer you on." So those people that are thinking, can I do it? Why not try?
There you go.
It's like Mother Teresa says, God's not looking for success. He's looking for us to try.
Participation,
exactly.
Yeah. The thing that really strikes me about what you've been sharing is how many people were touched by you walking the Camino. One person walking the Camino touched so many lives. Your family who got to support you and contribute to you, the people you met on the trail who got to help you when you were vulnerable or have you witness their story because they felt safe and comfortable with you. And all those people who followed you, who have now dialed into something within themselves because of what you did.
Never thought about
You, my friend, are a blessing.
Oh,
You did it. That you did.
I have to tell you that when you interviewed me, you made a comment that I can see you there. I can see you in Santiago looking at the cathedral. And that played in my head in terms of determination. Yes, I want to be in front of that cathedral, and I want to, reach that, however that looks. And like I said, anyone that's listening to this, make it your Camino. Don't try to cookie cut. It's not a cookie cut,
Can't be.
It can't be. It can't be. And like I said, if it's something you're even thinking about or flirting with, write it down and then really make a plan. I appreciate you letting me share my story.
Well, I think I mentioned I'm in Santiago right now. And when you just said, imagine yourself at the cathedral, I got to hold back tears because it's so incredibly moving
Isn't
to
it?
be in Santiago as pilgrims are arriving to complete their journeys. I mean, I could just sob just thinking about it. And I walked in 2 days ago from my Camino walk. Yeah. And it's just, wow, to be a part of this community, to be a part of something that people have been doing for over 1,000 years out of devotion to an idea that there's something holy here is extraordinary. And the statistics are crazy. I think 410,000 people have completed the pilgrimage and received the Compostela so far this year, and we're not even done.
You're kidding me. This year?
This year, it's October 21st while we're recording this. This is going to probably play in a few more weeks, or I'm not sure when it'll go live. But yeah, the last I saw was 407, and that was maybe yesterday or the day before. In the last year before the pandemic, 2019, I think, there were 347,000. So it's already way past the last biggest year.
Yeah, it's interesting because of COVID. Last year, St. James feast day was on a Sunday, and that's what made it a holy year.
The holy year.
But the Pope extending it because a lot of pilgrims weren't able to come in 2020. And that allowed me to come during a holy year for a Catholic or anyone going in the backside door.
Yes.
You're familiar with that?
I did that in the spring. Wasn't that sweet?
Oh,
what an honor and what a significant moment.
I went to 7:30 Mass the next day after I got to Santiago. And then I met up with my Camino buddies and had breakfast. And then we went to 9:30, I think it was 9:30 Mass. And they brought out the perfumery, or I forget what it's called.
Yeah, the Botafumero.
Yeah, I knew you would say it well.
Yeah. And for those who are listening who haven't been to Santiago, it's the big incense burner that weighs over 100 pounds and hangs from a rope from the ceiling. And they swing it at something like, I don't know, 70 kilometers an hour, just back and forth.
Well, they have like 5 or 6 priests or brothers. I'm not really sure. They're dressed in Santiago.
In robes. Yeah.
In robes, yes. And they pull on it. And then there's one person that just will pull it back to make it swing. And, incense and the prayers that are going up from there is just
extraordinary. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, the door that you mentioned,
Holy door.
The holy door is opened only during the Jubilee or the holy years. And I had such a picture in my mind of what a holy door would be like. It would be this big, heavy, double paneled, swing open, takes 5 guys to move it. It's not. I'm taller than the door. It's this little, tiny, unassuming, quiet, sweet little door with, I think there are engravings around the lintel. I mean, it's just so sweet. Yeah. And you queue up and you walk through it, and there you go. It's just so sweet.
It is. It was, it was quite,
it's poignant, isn't it? It's a moment in history that you got to participate in.
Yes.
It's really special. Mm-hmm. So one last question for you. Is there anything that you wish you had not known before you walked the Camino that somebody told you or you heard about or you were clued in on?
That I wish I had known, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, I think my vision of the meseta was incorrect from things people said or the way I interpreted what was said.
Okay.
One thing I do wish, while I would say the pilgrims I came in contact with probably 79% of them spoke English. A lot of the proprietors and the bar owners and all, they don't speak English, not very well. So that's one thing I wish I had also done besides riding a stationary bike. I wish I had taken some Spanish, even just conversational Spanish. I mean, I did learn how to order a beer and coffee with milk.
Well done.
Other than where's the lavatory or where's the water closet,
Yeah. That's really a good tip. And I find it's a sign of respect to your host country, but it also allows you to interact more with the local people. And some of these people who serve the pilgrims are just extraordinary.
They are. And it's their life. And it's, some of the albergue owners just had such great pride. If they were serving you a breakfast or serving you a communal dinner, don't miss the communal dinners. I'm not saying I loved everything that was ever put in front of me, but I love the camaraderie. I love getting to know other people. I love getting excited to see them again.
It's usually not about the food, is it? It's about the community, the sharing, the breaking of bread together. It's communion around the table, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing. Yeah. Communion and community, I sense those are coming from the same root word.
Right.
Oh, so good. Well, what would you like to say to wrap this up?
If you're flirting with the idea, and contact Nancy. She's a wealth of information. A great cheerleader too, even along the road. Ask questions. I can't even tell you the number of people that say, "Oh, that's on my bucket list." And it's like, okay, so what are you doing about it?
Yeah, move it to the top and let's get going.
And I think knowing people that have been through it, and especially experts like yourself, it just saves you from, I packed all the right stuff. There's not one thing I didn't use.
Wow.
I had a heads up on things that, worried me or concerned me and alleviated my stress. I was really worried about planes, trains, and automobiles getting to St. Jean until I talked to you. And then it was like, okay, this isn't easy, but it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Definitely can be done. People do it all the time, right? Planes go there, buses go there, trains go there every day.
Yeah.
So you just get on one. It's just a matter of knowing which one to get on.
Exactly.
Well, I don't wish this often, but if this were video rather than audio that our listeners are hearing, they would see how absolutely radiant you are.
Sweet.
Yeah. You've got that big smile and that glow and that twinkle in your eyes.
It's all
congratulations.
God. I just praise be to God because, I trusted in him. I really took a leap of faith, and I fully relied on him, and he didn't let me down. Not one, because someone said to me, "But you fell." And I was like, I didn't go home.
You fell, and a team of pilgrims swooped in to help you. It's almost as if they were cued. They were in the wings waiting to come help you.
Well, and I saw that just real quick. There was one of the women I was walking with from Australia, and she was quite a bit older than I was. And the first couple of days, she was just faster than me. Not that it mattered, but we were traveling together. And then one day, her backpack was just getting to be too much for her. And she ended up, several of us took things out of her backpack. And actually, it was a couple from California that said, let's divide up some of her backpack. And then she carried some of it. Well, it still was not enough. So the husband carried her backpack about probably 10 kilometers. Until we got her to where she was staying for the night. And I had to go further. But that's the kind of kindness, that's the kind of camaraderie that it wasn't just me that experienced that generosity and that kindness. And Yeah, I really haven't talked much about my Camino family, but I just loved having Mimi and Joe to check in with and making sure we just would make sure we're all okay. And that was nice. We all were traveling solo.
Mm. I think it's interesting too. Didn't you mention that you didn't meet them until a week or so in?
Right.
And I think there's this idea that, and maybe it comes from the movie The Way, that you meet your Camino family right away and cue the family, and there you are, and you're all together and you go the whole way together. But you could meet your Camino family halfway through. You could meet them at any time.
Exactly.
What a surprise.
It was really interesting, the number of people that wanted to be, it was like they wanted to be apart, but they had a different plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's okay. WhatsApp is great. This is where I am. Where are you? Let's go grab a beer.
Yeah. And we stay connected with the people who we want to and are meant to stay connected with.
Yeah. I'm still getting messages from people that I started with because they just got to Santiago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's really, really cool.
It's great. You are part of the community of pilgrims now and always will be.
I did it.
Yeah. I'm just so happy for you and
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not mine to be proud of you, but I am.
I appreciate it. No. Like I said, even on the tough descents, if I had known about it, would I have done it? I don't know. But now that I've done it, it's like, well, but I did it.
You did it and it's done. Well done. Well done, Pilgrim.
Thank you.
All right. Kathie, thanks so much for spending this time with me. It's just always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, well, I just hope we always stay connected. I really do.
Count on it. Count on it.
Who knows? Maybe my next Camino.
That'd be amazing. The people who I've interviewed for this first season of this podcast, we've just missed everybody, but who knows? Because I'm here twice a year. So the next time you're here.
Well, and you provide such a great service too. So
thank you.
I hope people are lucky to know you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Likewise.
Well, enjoy Santiago, okay? And go have ice. What's the name of the ice cream shop again?
Bico de Chiedo.
Yeah. Chicago, they have the best ice cream. And I don't even like ice cream, but I love their ice cream.
So again, Kathie, thank you.
Oh, pleasure. Really, thank you. It was great to kind of do a retrospect.
Look back and see where you've been.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
Yeah, don't forget to turn around.
Well done. Always look behind you.
Always look behind you. Yes.
Would you like to share your experience of getting ready to walk the Camino de Santiago and receive some personalized guidance on your planning and preparations? If you have not yet walked a Camino and would like to be a guest on this podcast, please find the link in the notes for this show to let me know you're interested. If you'd like assistance getting started on your Camino journey, or if you would like to join me on the trail in May or September, visit thecaminoexperience.com to take your first steps. Bye for now.